Harel.
Hello, Jorn.
Hey,
Hi, how are you, man?
Harel. Yeah,
Yes, definitely, yes.
I'm fine, man. Thanks.
Good, can you hear me well?
Where are you calling from? Yeah, sure. Where are you calling from?
Good, I'm calling you from Israel.
From Israel. Wow. I've been there.
I know, I remember. When are you coming back?
Oh, I don't know. There's no shows at the moment, so
Uh-huh.
just finished the record. We're supposed to play some shows this summer, but we had to take them out because the record was postponed, and we were supposed to plan some festivals or tour, but then the record was delayed and didn't come out now till June. So then we decided it was better to make some new plans for maybe October, November, or early next year.
October,
So
November.
we'll
Okay.
see.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, so you know what, before we talk about the new album, Life on Death Road, tell me a bit, since the album is literally coming out today on the 2nd of June, so tell me a bit about the experience. Are you still excited each time you release a new record? Is it still exciting to go into the studio, to be after it?
Yeah, I mean that was the whole point with this record, was to I mean, for all of us, it was we all respect each other really. We thought that this lineup together would be able to come up with something spectacular, and we all grew up with that classic groovy rock of the 70s and early 80s, and that's what we wanted to achieve really. We just felt that this was something we wanted to do for a long time. Actually, we were always busy. Everyone's stressing here and there, working with different projects, or it's been hectic. It's a hectic time we live in, so everyone is doing what they have to do to whatever, pay the bills or whatever, and be busy, keep busy, Also, if you're a musician, especially in the rock and metal scene, then you it's not like the 80s or something anymore, where people sold millions of records and didn't have to work for 5 years, staying 5 years writing songs and having a couple of kids and building a new house and not doing anything in music. This maybe at some point this is the situation for some artists back in the day, but today everyone's more in a working class mode. I think we are all I think realistic in a sense, even though I've been lucky, had some success throughout the years, and I'm a bit older than many of the other kids in the new metal scene. So I was lucky to be a part of the scene before it got to be too difficult. So I got to be established before things changed completely in the business. So I was lucky with that. So I'm fine, with things. So I don't have to stress as much as maybe everyone has to do these days. People have three, 4 bands, or they have a day job or two, and then they rehearse and have a band, and then they still want to make a career, but they can't afford to make a living from it, and they have to be realistic. So I think even though we've been in the game for a long time and we're all established, I think we're still very down to earth guys, realistic, because we never got anything for free in this life. We always had to work and keep busy all the time. We had always had to look at what to do in the next couple of years and make plans for that. And nothing was ever random. I could never sit back and say, oh, I'm taking some time off the next year or two because I just need to think about some new whatever, project or a new record, or we all had to keep busy and work, to to survive in the business. And but we were lucky that we didn't have to, you know, we're well off enough, you know, that we don't have to have a day job or anything.
Yeah.
You know? So in that sense, we are lucky, and you know, I feel I'm blessed with life, you know, in a way. I think the record that we did was not trying to fit in the market in any way. We just, you know, we never checking out what's popular or what's modern or trendy, or we never really asked the record company what they wanted either. We just told our people that we just want to make a proper rock album, something that we can be really proud of, something that gives us the same feeling that we had when we grew up and when we bought, you know, whatever, you know, Rainbow record or a Sabbath record or whatever, you know, whatever record, Whitesnake record or Ozzy or any types of music really, but something really organic and with a strong unit, you know, strong lineup that really fit together. And that's also one of the things that I think has been missing in today's music industry, because everything is going so fast and everybody's using technology as a substitute for the lack of talent they have, you know. It's kind of it feels like liberating to go and put these guys together now and deliver this album and say that yes, we are still here. We can, you know, it's still possible to do a classic heavy rock album in 2017. It's not just the bands back in the day that could do that.
Yeah,
we can do that as well. It's just a matter of you know, putting the right people together, taking the extra time, you know, step back and be honest. You know, how do you do it? Yes, you just look at your life and you look at and you try to be present in your life and you try to look at what happens in the world, where you come from, you know, and so in many ways this record is an imprint of who we are, where we come from, and it's also like a resume of the last. I mean, it's original songs, but still it's almost like a resume of the last 30-40 years of rock and metal, you know.
You feel so?
Yeah, even though I feel it because if you look, at least in the classic sense, if you look at development of rock music, if you look at what happened since the 60s, 70s, and all the bands that emerged out of that, I think those elements are all in this record in some ways. You know, you have everything in it. It's the more pure rock element. There's some melodic stuff going on there. There's some bluesy stuff going on there. There's a preference to everything. You know, there's a preference to Deep Purple, Free, Whitesnake, Black Sabbath. You know, all these bands, but still, you know, we never sat down to try to copy anything. We just brought those elements that we grew up with into the songwriting. You know, what's natural to do? What do we like? What, you know, most people today will sit and copy and paste and compile on a computer, you know, and then they will build something up, which is a new thing, and nothing's wrong with that because that's the new way of working, and you know, world moves on. So you have to accept that, but at the same time, you know, we grew up with the working class heroes, you know, people that had to really learn how to play well, and you couldn't just copy and paste things, you know. For example, if you look at some of those prog metal albums today, often they will compile a lot of tracks together. If they do a guitar solo, they play something high up there on the neck, something very fast, and then the next second you hear them play something at the bottom of the neck, you know, and and sometimes it's actually not possible to play that move well.
Okay.
It's just because they listen to 5 solos, and they say, oh, that's a great lick, I played really fast there, oh, it was really cool, and then they just put that piece together with another piece that's played down low on the neck, which maybe sounds great when you put the two together, but it's actually something that you cannot play with soul. You cannot play it in a natural way, because it's not possible, because you put it together, and if you are able to play it, then you can only play it looking at your neck, and you're not being like avalanche with it, communicating with anybody. You just look at what you play, and your biggest challenge is to make the notes and move your hand to the bottom of the neck, and you actually think about this, and you worry about this when you play, and you might say, okay, that, and you're concentrated and you're focused, but to me, where I come from, you're not. To me, you're just this uptight player that stands on stage, forcing yourself to play something that you're not really able to play well. You can play it clean because you're technically skilled. You can play it correct, but there's no tone behind it. There's no soul behind the note. There's no speaking with the guitar. There's only correct playing. And that's I think the main difference between where we come from and what goes on with most of the new bands of today in the rock and metal. So I think that's also one thing, the yin and yang thing. We wanted to do this record because we wanted to be proud ourselves. At the same time, we also wanted to show the world that you can still do records like this. It's not only the band. The bands back in the day that could do this, So it's just a matter of putting the right people together and taking the extra time to do it right, And because that's what they did back in the day. If you look at the producers, if it's Robert Mutt Lang that did Back in Black or all these records, it's the combo of the band and the producer together that took the time to do a proper rock album. And that's why you have these classics out there, but no one's doing it anymore. Everybody's just making these records as fast as they can. And as I said, using technology as a substitute for the lack of talent and to save time. And of course, then you always have a weaker result. You might have a good sounding result. You might have a good song as well. Great song, melody, everything is perfect. But it's all very stereotyped, very... very cold and sterile sounding.
Yeah.
All sounds the same, even though some people say, no, that guy has a, high, thin voice, the other guy is growling. Of course, that's always a difference. But in general, if you look at what kind of programs people use, they use the same programs, same digital tools. If there's something new in the market, same as the phones, Everyone's using the same snap, the same, it's the same in music. Use the same technology, and of course that will. And we saw some of that in the 80s as well. When the first drum machines that worked well came.
Okay.
You could tell that certain albums and certain songs, they sound very similar because that's typically the 80s, and it started, I think, back then more than ever, before. But today it has come to the point. At least back then you had some diversity, variation. There were still people doing different things. You still had like Peter Gabriel, or you had experimenting with some of that technology, and you had more artistic artists like Kate Bush or Dal Bello or whatever these artists were named. And then you had all these like Joni Mitchell or what have various styles. And same in rock and metal. Everything from glam rock or David Lee Roth, Van Halen to Motorhead, and it was still in the middle of all the same sounding 80s bands. You still had diversity and originality, and I think that's what we see today. It's almost gone. And those bands that are original, they are usually never heard of, because they are usually some Irish band at some pub or a bar playing, and you sit there and you drink your beer and you listen and you think, oh my God, what a fantastic singer, or wow, what a great band, and they have to struggle to pay their bills, and they're very happy if you buy their CD, which they paid for themselves, and they don't even have a record company, or a distribution. So this is what you see today. Some of the rare talents have become just a very, very small niche, and it's not even possible to buy it. Something maybe we can find it on Facebook, maybe, but something like that. I mean, it's really a new time, and we just wanted to do something that we could really be proud of, like I said. So that's what Life on Death Road is all about, reflecting on the world as it is, but still doing it from my or our generation's perspective. And I mean, we are halfway there, halfway to the station, hopefully, So I'm 50 next year, so I'm getting up there, but we definitely lived and experienced a lot of things, and also think that many people seem to forget that people talk about the oldest bands that are still around, or some of them are not, but the 60s, 70s bands. And people tend to forget that people like me and Matt, Francesco, and Alex, we were there, back then. People think that we came later, because so we are not the old guys, or we're not the real deal from back in the day, But we were actually there, We grew up. In 1973 when Sweet released Ballroom Blitz, I was only 5 years old, but my father came home with that single in '73, and I was a fan instantly. And ever since then, I was totally hooked on rock music, and it started with Elvis Presley. I remember when Elvis died,
That's even your song, in the song the '80s, the man from the '80s.
No, man of the '80s. Yeah, so we were definitely there, even though we were young. We were there. I was 9 years old when I started singing in my first band, even though we were not, professional. It was still, we were listening to the records when they were new. We were able to go to concerts, with our parents, and this was in the mid '70s. So we were there when all these albums came out. I remember when all these records came out, Rainbow albums with the Ronnie James Dio, or Purple Mark II. When John Lawton became a singer of Uriah Heep. I remember all these, and then Next Era with the next singer and the next singer, and when these records were new, we were waiting at the store to buy the records. We were a part of that, and we tried to play like these guys did, in a way. So we're not just listening. We were not just listening to the old records and watching some documentary to learn what happened. We were actually there, and we experienced those times, for real. Not just the music, but also the whole situation of living, in those times. How the system worked, I remember most people in Norway only had radios, in the 60s and the parts of the 70s. While in America they had tons of TV channels, and that was and the color TV from the 50s, 60s. That was normal, but we had black and white TV back home when I was 5 years old or something. Mm-hmm. I remember with this white black and white TV, almost looking like Jane Fonda, Barbarella style design. It was really like futuristic 60s, but I remember all these things, and Radio Luxembourg. You couldn't get access to all kinds of music. It was not. We had a record store where I lived, small record store. It was a store where they sold the TVs and refrigerators and stuff like that. And in the corner they had a small section of vinyls. And I was always there looking for the record. And if there was something I wanted to order, I would have to wait for the bus to deliver that for maybe a month, And every day after school, I would go to the store and ask the guy and say, "So what happened to that record?" I'm waiting for that record. It's called the Rainbow. It's called Wrongly Rock and Roll. I know. Yeah, what you mean is, which one was it? Was it Rising? No, I have that one already. I bought that one last year. This is the new one. Okay. Oh yeah, here I see it. Yeah. No, it's not. I'm sorry, but it's been delayed, so it didn't come today. But next week. So it was always like this, and that time.
Like harassing the music store.
Yeah. So it was and this record is kind of also, like you said, Man of the 80s, really explains where we come from, or and as a resume on or with outtakes of what we experienced and what happened, from the Nobel Peace Prize in '79 to when Ronald Reagan got to be president. And then I remember everyone in the 80s talked about the end of the world.
Really?
Everyone thought that the end of the world would be in 1999 or around the millennium. It was either the Maya calendar that was predicted the end of the world, predicting the end of the world, or it was
the millennium bug, the Y2K bug.
Yeah, it was virus or or a nuclear disaster, whatever. And that's also why you have all these movies from the 80s.
I love them.
About the aftermath, after the nuclear war, or when the world has to start over again. And I love those movies too, back in the day. But and it wasn't until the 80s, I think, that the people, like politicians and people in important positions, would openly talk about the melting in the Arctic areas and the environmental problems and stuff. So in the 60s, 70s, everyone would sweep that under the rug and not talk about it, and would laugh. If you were talking about it, there will always be some politician or someone saying that these guys are just flower power. They just think they can bring peace and to the world, and pure water and air. These are just full of acid and drugs. Other substances. So I think and then later on, people in the 80s, people realized that this was actually a threat to our planet, and so they started to worry more, and it was all put on the official agenda, and you suddenly saw people on TV talking about it. But before, you never saw that on TV, or it was always seen upon as something that you shouldn't talk about, because it was a bit, then you were a bit, out of proportion, or you were a bit should I put it different. Yeah. So, but then I remember what happened very well, and and that also shaped us as human beings. Growing up without internet, with that one TV channel, it's, black and white TV, experiencing how it changed with color TV. Also listening to radio a lot, even though we had TV, radio was still very important when I grew up. It was to many people more important than TV, So I used to listen to Radio Luxembourg, for example, the American West Coast music. My father also, he's a musician, so he also used to listen to Luxembourg a lot. So I remember him doing it first, and then when I was a kid, and then I used to do it when I got a bit older. And all the great music from the U.S. Was already there, So that was really cool. These old bands like Redbone, this band that would claim to be Indians, but they were not. They were actually Mexicans dressed up like Indians.
Okay.
But they did some great songs. It's a song called "Witch Queen of New Orleans." You probably never heard it, but it was a big hit in the U.S. back in the day. And songs like that you never heard on the radio in Europe, at least not in Norway. So we heard stuff like this on Luxembourg, and then we could buy the record or order the record later, and we wrote down the name of this band, and same thing with other band, Little River Band from Australia. I grew up with that, but this is not really a heavy band or a rock band, but a nice band with elements of rock, but in folk music and very melodic. You could say it's a mix of folk, rock and AOR.
Okay.
But still they have some experimental elements there. There's still some like a hint of Kansas or Styx or something in the band. So really great band. And John Farnham, the Australian singer, was also in that band for a few years. And he did, I think, three albums with them. Great albums. Stuff like that we never heard back home, because you couldn't get access to music, and you never saw that on Norwegian TV. Anyway, so and then later on in the 80s we had these night rock shows from Germany, from Essen.
Okay.
In Germany, and then we used to, we could just, every Friday starting at 11 or 12 in the night, it started, and then we would see all these bands like Michael Schenker, UFO, Foreigners, Scorpions, Thin Lizzy, and that way we could really enjoy some of our influences, and that's how we discovered it. And later on, of course, when you had the VHS videotapes, then it was possible to record. And we started to record these programs in the 80s, and we could play them back again. Because not everything was on MTV. It was only a few bands on MTV. So some of those bands that we really loved, they were never on MTV. They were, maybe you were lucky to see one video later in the 80s, 86, 87. Maybe they did something and changed their style. Especially the bands that were very 70s sounding, and then didn't want to convert to that 80s style in a way, which was a new trend. Like Queen did, for example. Queen changed completely. From that jazz album, Bohemian Rhapsody thing, and whatever they did, Night at the Opera and all that. So
they became more radio friendly, you mean?
Yeah, suddenly they started doing Radio Gaga and I Want to Break Free, and totally different, more pop, but still great songwriting and stuff. It was more about the production and the songwriting to target the radio. But many bands that we loved, they never converted to that recipe. They never wanted to do it. They still did the same, and like they did in the 70s, because they wanted to be, honest with what they did and enjoy things in a more pure way. So yeah, so I think those bands you never saw those bands on MTV or on commercial TV. So and I think that's why you also have some bands that never made it as big as some of the other bands, like British bands like City Boy, for example, which was similar to like Queen and Sweet and those bands. Great band. That was actually Rob John Mutt Lang producing those records as well. From the old records like The Day the Earth Caught Fire by City Boy in 1979.
Okay.
Fantastic. Another one called Heads Are Rolling by City Boy, and there's even one called Dinner at the Ritz by City Boy. Fantastic records, and it's same quality as some of those biggest bands, but they were still same as the Sweet did. Sweet did the same, but they did it the opposite way around. They started with more poppy songs in the end of the 60s, beginning of the 70s, and then they wanted to do their own thing, kind of, because they started working with some songwriters, and they were more tailor-made for radio. And then they got tired of it, and then they started becoming more a rock act and more experimental. And of course what happened was that then the 80s came, and these guys were kind of not popular anymore in the mainstream scene, and people wanted Radio Gaga, and stuff like that. So so that's why some of those bands were forgotten. I think some bands that crossed over and lasted longer, like Slade, for example. Slade had a revival because they did something like My Oh My.
Okay.
It was a big hit in the 80s, and they did this comeback, and so they actually decided to cross over a bit, to extend their career a bit, and further, and they did it great. So but some bands like Budgie, for example, the British band, they were always true to what they love to do, and but of course the market usually controls.
Yeah, definitely.
If you're gonna be a part of the business, you don't have to convert. It's the same like religion. You don't have to convert to Christianity if you believe in Thor and Odin. If you're a true Viking, you can always. You can always stick to that, but it's up to you basically. If you can have a life with that, that's fine. But some bands really could not survive in the business from doing what they love to do, so they either had to quit and do something else in life, or they had to convert to a new commercial strategy to have success.
Okay, so after years of being in the business, like working with some of the best musicians on the planet and knowing the metal scene and the rock scene inside out, is there anything to you that makes the metal industry stand out compared to the wider music industry, like for the better, or is it just the same money-making machine?
Well, I think it used to be very much different. I think more like you would see the rock scene as the real thing, but I think that's a long time ago now. Still some older bands doing it in the same way, but I think what has happened now is that most bands are sounding the same, and it's a bit of a stereotype thing going on. So I don't think people put their heart into it in the same way anymore. But at the same time, I don't think everyone's speculative about what they do. I just think that technology opened up the opportunity for for a lot of people. People that wouldn't get a record deal in 1980 because they would not have have talent enough. Back in the day, you had to be a Freddie Mercury or a Paul Rogers or a Kate Bush or whatever, John Farnham or whatever, Cliff Richard or Elvis Presley. You had to have that kind of thing, like Rod Stewart or Bonnie Tyler. If you had a certain character to your voice, like that raspy style, for example, like they have, then you had something totally different, like Dan McCafferty of Nazareth. If you had something like that, then you really had something strong and unique, and you would have a chance to build a strong career. And I think today a lot of people that don't have those qualities, they are now making records using the digital tools that they have available, and they can use those as a substitute for what they cannot do themselves. You can auto-tune, you can put layers of stuff and effects on, and you can make it sound good. You don't even have to know how to play or sing well. You can still make a song or an album that sounds pretty good. And if you have to play it live, you can always bring some stuff pre-recorded, and have some partly playback stuff in your set, and you still pull it off, and people will go home and say, "Wow, pretty good, yeah, pretty good band, yeah." But it's all a bit fabricated, and so it's a different way of working, and maybe it's not wrong. Maybe it's just the way development goes. The world turns, so you have to accept those new tools and the new ways of thinking. But at the same time, I come from a different time, and we're all children of our generation and our time. So it's I always love some true craftsmanship, people that really can play with tone and speak from within with what they do. That's something with feeling, which is the reason why I started in this business in the first place, because the hairs were rising to the back of my neck because I heard a great singer or a great band or whatever, and a great song. That's why I love music. So to me, that's the criteria why I'm in the business. If I can't, and that's also back to this record. That's also why it's important to me that every time I do something or record something, it has to give me the same feeling as I had in the 70s or the 80s when I had that experience, and that's what fueled the fire, and and made you continue and strive to make and drive forward to make some good music. And if that stops, then I guess there's no use making records. I don't think I would ever end up being a guy that would do like many of the bands today, just to make a record, just to get paid. Once in a while you might balance out because you're living in a capitalistic world, so you have to survive in the business in a way, so I'd rather do music than have a day job, because that's all I know. I've done this since I was a kid, and you get environmentally damaged in a way because you've been in the same bubble for so long, and you enjoy it. You enjoy being your own boss somehow, and not to have the same routines every day. To watch the neighbors, drive to work at 7 in the morning when you can put your coffee on, and you can write some songs, or get back on some emails, or do something at the house, or just with your family. It's liberating, and you really learn to appreciate that, and that's why you also sometimes compromise a bit, because that's the way life goes. So someone offers you to sing on a record, or your record company says, "Jorn, we want you to be a part of this project," and and they sometimes offer you some good money for the job, and you listen to it and you realize that it's not bad, it's not my favorite style, but you know, I could maybe do something cool on this record. So you know, no one's really 100% idealistic anymore. You know, in this world, maybe no one ever was. You know, but I think there was a better balance back in the day when I grew up, because then the bands you could play in one band, you could take some time off to reflect and write the proper record. There was enough money in the business to actually allow yourself to step back for a few months and, you know, record a record, write some songs, and you know, and not to be everywhere at the same time. Like today, everyone working with everyone, spitting out records. Maybe too often, you know. I've done that myself, you know. But then again, in between everything, I mean, first of all, as long as you do your best on what you do, that's important, that you can add something to what you record. You can actually feel that, okay, I did something good with this project. I didn't just sing it and just you know, without any feeling or personal input. I actually tried my best and worked hard to squeeze something personal out of this, and I think I managed to do maximum of what I could. As long as you have that mentality, you know, I think that you will still achieve a good result, and in the end, even though it's not always your personal cup of tea, you know, the style or maybe there's like 3 songs you really love, but then there's the rest of the record you think, you know, it's not your favorite thing. And then that has also something to do with where you come from again, you know. There are new styles today, new ways of using keyboards, new ways of, you know, for example, the bombastic, majestic, or whatever, powerful, or how you want to put it, like this prog metal thing, theatrical stuff. I like that. But I love more like Rush or those bands. I think it was just, you know, it was I think keyboards were used in a more tasteful way. It was cooler sounding, everything. The drummers were like more, I think, skilled, and they had more personality, and you know, had their own kind of thing you could easily hear. It's like when you hear Geddy Lee sing, you know, it's just, you know instantly who sings, you know. But many of the bands today, they sound pretty much the same, and especially in the prog metal and the power metal scene, it's very, very.
You're right. Yeah.
Little difference. Yeah, very little difference to the bands, you know. And, yeah. Thanks. Well, yeah. Anyway, but I think that you know, as long as you can do your own thing in the middle of this, as long as you can pull back and get to do something you really love to do, like we did with the Life on Death Road. We all have different things we work with, but we can actually do what we really love to do, you know, in between everything else, and that's the carrot. That's the icing on the cake, you know. It's the reward that we have. So yeah, there's a lot of elements, you know, that to why we do what we do, you know, and I think we always try to be as honest as we can with how we live, because in the end we just work with music. And that's what we've done for so many years, and that's what we dreamt of doing. And also back to the 70s and what we dreamt of. You know, we had to paint the pictures in our minds. It's like reading a book. You know, we had this American dream going. Everyone was like looking to America. This kind of
with the movies and the music and the posters.
Yeah, Hollywood, you know, Marilyn Monroe, James Dean, Elvis Presley, you know, and we were definitely, you know, influenced by that, and we never really could see anything for real until we actually went there to experience it.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think that was an advantage for my generation because we were more hungry and more determined, to travel or to make things happen. Today, people can just go on YouTube or on the internet and they just watch something and they say, yeah, I thought I wanted to go to Australia and study there, but looking at these people now in Sydney and how I know this guy from Germany,
Mm-hmm.
I saw this guy. The system there is not really working the way
Mm-hmm.
he thought, and I really have second thoughts now about going because I don't think it's gonna be more complicated than I thought, and people actually
Due to politics?
Yeah, well, just because you have access to information, you don't have to, you can stay at home in your living room and you can decide what to do for the future based on the information you find on the internet. It's one click away. And you can, in many ways it's positive because then you don't have to go and discover that you made a mistake, right? You can find out when you're at home. So that's positive in one way, but on the other side, it's negative because you lose that adventure. You don't get to experience adventure, and you also don't have to learn and fight for your position. So I think that's the difference. I think many people from my generation, maybe my generation is one of the last ones. Growing up in those terms, with those terms, that you had to travel with nothing, and you had to go there to find out, is this something I'm going to hate or am I going to love it? Do I have to work hard? Will it be complicated? I don't know, but I think it's going to be great, and you just carry that dream and you just go because you can only imagine how it's going to be like. There's no information about anything. There's no one to tell you unless you have a friend or someone in the family that moved far away and that can explain to you, or that you can visit or can say, Jorn, this is very, very difficult. You should not do it. Maybe you find some stuff there, but in general, you had to experience everything yourself. And I think also that's a part of that drive that I've had. The fire that's been with me all the time, and that's why I kept going, trying to reach that goal, and follow that dream. And I think people today kind of don't have to do it in a way, so they get a bit more sloppy and lazy. People play a bit more safe with what they do, and. So but then again, this is new times. These are new times. So you also have to accept that these are new times. And like I said before, what's better, what's worse? I don't know. Both sides have a positive and negative elements. So.
Okay, Jorn, so thank you so much for your time. I'm sure the new album, Life on Death Road, is going to be amazing. I absolutely love the 3 new singles, Love is the Remedy, Life on Death Road, and Men of the 80s. Yeah, it's killer. So I hope to see you guys in concert soon, and take care and all the best. Really, thank you so much.
Yeah, you too, Harel. Yeah, great to talk to you, Harel. Yeah, take care. Have a nice summer, man.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Cheers,
Take care.
Yeah, bye-bye. Yeah, bye.
I'll never sell my soul to greed.